talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In your favorite sketches with special guests, it's on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, so welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our Hot Take Show, coming to you live immediately following the Jack Black, Elton John, and Brandi Carlile episode of Saturday Night Live. My name is Jon Schneider from the SNN. So excited to be back with you after this really, really fun episode of SNL. No crazy things happened at the end of the show. We're just going to have a good time talking about what we saw here tonight. So I can't wait to get into it. We are, of course, here as a presentation of LateNighter.com and with two amazing guests and an awesome chat who I cannot wait to get all of their thoughts on the show tonight. So first up, let's bring in the incredible Halle Dowden-Parrott. Halle, how are you?
I'm doing good, John. It is so past my bedtime, but I'm channeling the inner Jack Black energy to be hype and be energized, and I'm really excited to talk about this episode. So I'm excited to get into it.
We've been waiting 20 years almost for Jack Black to return to the show. So it's a great night to stay up late. It was really fun to get to watch this one live. And I'm so happy to bring somebody back to the podcast, back for the first time this season. I don't think you've been on the show in a while, Anthony, but I'm very excited to have you here. Anthony Conway is here tonight. How are you, buddy?
Man, so happy to be back. It has been far too long, like you said. Tonight was a really, really fun episode. Brought me out of the dumps of watching Duke lose just prior to the episode starting. But yeah, this was super, super dope. Happy to be here, man.
Yeah, that was a very crazy. That when sports goes head to head with the timing of SNL, as a sports fan, it's always tough. But yes, this was a crazy night. Of course, national championship will be Houston and Florida on Monday night. But let's talk about what we saw here from the Jack Black, Elton John, and Brandi Carlile episode. So coming out of the night, Halle, do you have any major headlines or hot takes that you saw?
I just think my major headline is that it took way too long to get Jack Black back on this show. His energy and his vibe, I love him so much. I knew that that's what it was going to be going into the night, but just Jack Black, the man that you are, I love him wholeheartedly.
Anthony, what about you? Any hot takes or headlines from the night that you saw from Jack Black's episode?
Hot take is that this was a really, really solid episode all the way around. And didn't realize until I did a little bit more digging into Jack Black being on the show. Didn't realize it had been so long since he had last hosted. So that was just fun, kind of going down that rabbit hole and the anticipation going into the episode too. But not so much hot takes as I was just like, no, this is very refreshing and really fun.
Yeah, there's two things I'm walking away with tonight. Number one is it's never too late to bring back a great SNL host. So, sometimes it's like, they haven't been around for so long. Will they still have it? Jack Black clearly still has it. For whatever reason, circumstantially, maybe he's talked about, doing some indie films. For whatever reason, the decision was made not to book him. Maybe he didn't want to compare the next episode he was going to do to that all-time great episode he did in 2005, and he just wanted to go out on a high. But 19 and a half years later, he comes back to the show, and I feel like he hasn't lost a step. This could have been Jack Black performing in 2002, 2003, 2005. For me, this was as old school as it gets from one of the all-time greats. And he did crack our top 50 hosts this past summer. And he certainly would be higher on this list after tonight. Also think this was a really good episode for the cast. Very similar to what we saw with Gaga a couple weeks ago. Where, she comes in and I feel like the energy was really infectious. I felt like the whole cast really brought it tonight, really elevated a lot of the segments. In particular, I want to point out Andrew Dismukes and James Austin Johnson, or as we lovingly refer to them as Judge Mukes. Andrew in 7 sketches tonight, James in 6 sketches tonight. So really all over the show. I was really happy for them. So if you are a fan of them both, I think you walked away from tonight feeling pretty good. So cannot wait to dive into everything we saw here tonight. So let's head over to our cold open where we get James as Trump, delivering a speech on Tariff. So comes out, does his regular rants that you would expect to see from James as Trump, including some severance jokes, a little bit of Magda, Make America Great Depression again, talking about what he's doing to the economy. We'll be the ones eating the cats and the dogs. Of course, he does reference Morgan Wallen and the "Get Me to God's Country," right? Remember that. So that will, we'll put a pin in that for a second because that won't be the only time that's mentioned throughout the episode. Andrew's going to appear in this one as Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. And then we get the return of Mike Myers as Elon Musk, who took an episode off for last week's episode, but really we have been seeing him a lot in 2025 as Elon Musk. So Halle, how do you feel like SNL did with this cold open we saw here tonight?
I feel like this was like as good of a job as could have been done with the tariffs topic. I went into this kind of expecting the tariffs to be the cold open situation. And as I think a lot of people are, I was like, I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm tired of talking about tariffs. It's so much. But I think they added in enough with like the severance mentions. And I also, very top of mind going into the episode, was wondering if they were going to refer back to the Morgan Wallen of it all, and to have that happen right off the top of the episode in the cold open kind of perked up that cold open for me. So while the tariff talk in general, I was like, man, I'm so over it this week. I think they did a great job making it at least unique and having some highlights in the cold open in a topic of conversation I think most people are sick of by now.
Yes, and for all the people that sent me messages this week saying this wasn't a thing until you made it a thing, well, I don't have that much power, okay? This was a very big deal, and I just think, like, there are many examples of SNL referencing their own controversies that have happened on the show over the years, like when Ashley Simpson, like they referenced that, Sinead O'Connor, no matter how you feel about that, was referenced many times after that on the show. I do think this is like as great as a thing as SNL can do, which is when something happens on their show that becomes bigger than the show, the fact that they mention it on the show makes it canon, makes it lore. And I think those are things that are really fun here, that they incorporated a couple of those jokes here tonight. Anthony, how do you feel like SNL did with their cold open on Trump with the tariffs?
I actually really enjoyed it. I think similarly, the very top of it, not so much eye roll, it's just like, being an American right now isn't fun. Hearing how the tariffs are going to be affecting everything from buying a Nintendo Switch to the possibility of us having to deal with another economic collapse, the third in my lifetime. Not really something that I really want to be thinking about on a Saturday night, but I thought that the cold open was actually very, very solid. Did a great job making light out of it. Always happy to see Mike Myers come back. To your point, the Mawa, the Magda, both really landed for me. Thought it was very, very solid. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was very fun. I am happy to see Mike return as Elon. I know he's sort of repeating the same shtick, but I do think, just getting him in there is a fun, nostalgic way to keep the thread going of season 50. We're not in the election cycle. We're not, and there's no anniversary special on the horizon like there was for most of the season. But I do think having the alumni in there was really good. So I really did enjoy that here. I thought that this worked a lot better, James as Trump, for me, not having Trump in the cold open last week to give us a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a break from the SNL version of Trump. And then to have him back here, I thought that it allowed for some fresh commentary. So that was good for me. Between dress and air, there was a couple of changes to this cold open, including the scroll at the beginning. They adjusted that slightly. There was in the dress, the scroll asked why the audience was laughing. Also, Mikey Day was in the cold open in dress as a warehouse factory worker, and that ended up getting cut from dress to the live show. So in the live show, we only get James as Trump, Andrew as Howard Lutnick, and Mike as Elon Musk here. But so as expected, I think they could have gone a couple of different ways with the cold open. I was thinking, would they end up doing some sort of Cory Booker thing, because of obviously that was very, very big deal this week, but they ended up going with the tariffs, and we'll for sure continue to monitor what they do moving forward as we head towards the end of the season. All right, let's head over to Jack Black in that monologue. So, he talks about how You have no idea what this means to me to be back. And truly, like, I would just love to ask Jack, like, were you asked over the last 19 years, why did you decide now was the right time for you to host? Obviously, he has the Minecraft movie coming up, but, he says it's been 20 years and he's going to quit in the middle of the monologue. And then all of a sudden, like, this riff from the band gives him some power. Once again, very typical Jack Black, that he starts singing back on Saturday Night Live again, sings about the films that he's done. He leaves the stage. He walks up to the balcony. Typically when somebody leaves a stage, we don't always see them walk up to the balcony. So that's a pretty rare shot in SNL history. And we get to see some celebrities in the audience, including Bill Burr, who hosted the season, Kieran Culkin, who everyone's clamoring to host again. I think I saw Judy Golden there. I know Bill and Kieran, they're just coming off Glenn Ross on Broadway, so probably coming right after their show. We get this great moment of Kenan Thompson with Jack Black, who, of course, Jack hosted Kenan's first episode as a cast member back in 2003. So just a really, really cool moment there. And then, of course, typically when somebody comes back after a long time, they don't know who the new cast members are. So trying to figure out who Heidi and Marcelo are in this one as well. Anthony, how do you feel like Jack did with the monologue?
I thought Jack's monologue was great. It's really just the countdown until we get Jack singing. So I think for them to really kick it off and us getting that opportunity was amazing. So your point, was really surprised but excited to see Bill Burr and Kieran sitting in the audience. I'm seeing Glenn Gary in 2 months, so I'm actually really excited about that. But yeah, it was just fun. It was exactly what you expect out of Jack Black. Set a really nice tone for the night. And again, you're waiting for Jack Black to sing. Let's start the night off by giving us that moment and just setting up the tone for the rest of the episode.
What about you, Halle? How do you feel like Jack did with the monologue?
I loved it. I take very discombobulated notes for every hot take show that I do. And the first bullet point I have for the monologue is just, oh my God, Jack Black is so awesome. And then the second one's just, this is the most Jack Black monologue ever. I think it was written so well for him. And beyond that, one of my favorite things ever is just a unique use of the studio space. I love it when they break off from the stage. Kind of the audience gets to see a different part of the studio than we usually see during a monologue. Because I'm kind of super nosy and I like to see everything and see how things are laid out and try to sneak a peek at the sets for later in the show. And I just thought that was such a unique use of the space. It really warmed my heart to have a little Kenan moment in there, because I know that was a topic of conversation going into this episode. Was like, how special is that for Kenan right now, going back to his very, very early days. So I loved this monologue. I think it was such a good tone setter for Jack Black and the energy he was going to keep bringing to the show throughout the rest of the episode.
Yeah, this monologue reminded me a lot of Marty Short's monologue from '96, when he hosts in season 22 and he flies up into the audience and stuff like that. And yeah, I just think one of the things that has really worked for me with the Gaga episode and then again with this Jack Black episode is just the use of space and creativity you get when you bring in a multi-talented performer. And Jack, for me, when we were discussing who the greatest hosts were of all time as voted by the audience this summer, and we were trying to evaluate whether they really deserve to be on the list or not, one of the criteria that I felt was something I needed to look at when evaluating these hosts was, do they have a brand that you could easily define when they bring it to the show? And I feel like Jack is so easy to characterize as just this multi-talented performer that's going to sing, gonna move around the audience, not afraid to use his body, and him doing somersaults and always ready to rock. I feel like is so him and not anybody else who I can easily define as being putting in that box from the history of the show. So it's just one of those things that when I'm watching this episode tonight, I know how good he is, but the monologue reminded me how good he is. And that is exactly what I'm looking for from the show. I'm looking for him to kick things off by setting the table. And I think he did that beautifully tonight. So this was an awesome monologue. Definitely one of my favorites of the entire season. We then go to a game show called Love Match, where Andrew Dismukes is in the game show host role, which is not a role that we typically get from him. He's playing a guy named Todd Bruff, who is hosting a blind dating game show. Chloe is the contestant who's going to pick between James Austin Johnson, who's playing Alan from Tempe. We got Marcelo as Dan from Richfield. And we got Jack Black, who's Gene from Seattle, except he kind of looks like Indiana Jones. And there's all this back and forth between Andrew Dismukes, our host, and Jack Black's character about like, are you purposely dressing as Indiana Jones? And the argument that ensues, eventually we will get a new Bachelor number one, who is Bowen dressed as Steven, who's dressed like somebody from Pirates of the Caribbean as the end joke here. But Halle, how do you feel like this concept came together, the love match game show?
I think this was a great start to the episode. To me, it felt like a combination of last season's Jumanji sketch and last season's Beavis and Butthead sketch, which were two of my favorites of the season. But going back to that Jumanji one, I love it when they put Andrew Dismukes in these like super frustrated, yelling at people who are doing dumb things, like denying knowing Indiana Jones type role. And I was so excited to see Dismukes in this kind of game show host role, which is a deviation from what we usually see from him and also from these types of sketches. And I thought even like the simpler lines that were coming from like James Austin Johnson and Marcelo were awesome. I think it's crazy that we had back-to-back weeks of game show contestants talking about butt, but I love that, I guess. Good for them. But I thought this was a really strong game show start and a really big episode highlight for Dismukes, which I always love. So this was when I knew we were in good hands from the monologue on, but this was when I was like, sketch-wise, we're in a good place for tonight. This has momentum. I'm excited to see where the night goes.
I agree. I really felt like this was refreshing for me because this was as great as Andrew's been all season, and he's been in many sketches and surely like a large part of the show. I do feel like I've been missing like notable Andrew Dismukes style sketches. And this to me had a lot of the elements of what I loved from Andrew last season, where he would just get so obsessed with one particular thing to the point where it drove him crazy and he would start yelling. And I think that that was a characteristic that he picked up, and he certainly developed as like become a better actor, and he could play a million different types of roles in a sketch. But this to me, not necessarily the game show host, but what he was doing through the character of the game show host is very Andrew. So I loved getting to have that as the lead-off sketch for the night. I mean, it's perfect for somebody who loves Andrew Dismukes. So, Anthony, what did you think of the love match sketch?
I think I saw it in the chat just a minute ago that this was a great appetizer for the rest of the episode. And I agree. Jack Black committing to the bit, the moment when he cracks the whip, and just like completely denying the fact that he's dressed up like Indiana Jones, that he feels like he's just dressed up like Gene. It's just fun. Dismukes is doing such a great job of being the straight man, balancing out all of it. But yeah, great way to kind of like, again, kick off what this episode is going to be like, set a nice tone, and just a great character for Jack Black to kind of like, whet the appetite with before we dive into the rest of the show.
Yeah, and there's a couple things I really noticed from this sketch. One, I feel like this sketch was the Jumanji sketch that everyone loved from the Kristen Wiig episode, if it had a baby with Beavis and Butthead from the Gosling sketch. So like I feel like they took a lot of the best elements of two of the best sketches of last season and put that in here. And I also felt like there was really good camera work that they did in this sketch, where when Jack Black was talking, the camera would be like slowly zooming in on him. And I felt like it was to make the point of that he's just like this obsessive, weird Indiana Jones fan who doesn't want to admit it. And I love like, and so it creates this like awkward tension that they're trying to like let the audience feel through the camera lens zooming in on him. So go back and watch that when you guys do to check that out. And I my favorite part was was Indiana Jones from Indiana. And it's like, oh no, wait, I think that's just his nickname. And then there's like, see, I got you. And he was like, no. So like, I think just playing with that of like, we don't know what his true intentions are creates this scenario that I think really clicked for this. How like if he leaned in one direction or really exposed his intentions, I think that it wouldn't have worked as well. So really enjoyed this sketch that kicked off the night. Then we get a commercial Now, I don't know if this was the experience of a lot of the audience, but typically when we're going to throw to a pre-tape after that first live sketch, we usually see cast members in it pretty quickly to let us know that this isn't a real commercial. But because it was all extras and it took a sec for Jack Black to come into this, I was like a little bit like, wait, what is happening here? But it's just another ordinary party when Jack walks in with Cheetah from Cheetos, who's voiced by Andrew Dismukes. And then we get, we're talking about only the Flaming Hot will do. And it turns into a commercial for Preparation H, but not just any Preparation H, but Flamin Hot Preparation H. And Jack's character, Stuart, ends up, rubbing it all over himself and being on fire. And this was pretty nuts, Anthony. What did you think of the Flamin' Hot Preparation H commercial?
I loved it. Similar to your point, did not realize what it was as it was starting. I thought that I had an opportunity to go grab a glass of water. So then once I realized, oh, we're still in the middle of the episode and this is our first pre-tape, like you said, it's just you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know where it's going, but it's such a great thing for Jack Black. This one was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was wild. Halle, how did you feel about the Preparation H commercial?
I think this was so well done, and I think it's largely because it was Jack Black. I think this is the type of sketch where you really need a host who's going to like fully commit and fully lean in. You can't really put half energy into Flamin' Hot Preparation H, but Jack Black is perfect for that. I love this. I did also at first, I was just so excited. I was like, yay, we're talking about hot Cheetos. I have a hot Cheeto problem. I had to stop eating hot Cheetos because they hurt my stomach too bad. So I was like, wow, this is crazy night for me all around here. And then it turned into Jack Black getting Preparation H put on his butt. That was a crazy thing to look up to as I was taking notes. I just think that this would not have worked if it didn't have a host like Jack Black really just throwing everything at it and full sending it and bringing that energy. There were multiple sketches tonight that I felt like were crafted just perfectly for the host, and this was maybe the number one example of that to me.
The visual of Jack like bent over putting the Preparation H on himself was wild, like especially for like the early part of the evening. And I'm very curious, like I know we got Andrew as the voiceover here opposite of Jack, but did this need other cast members in it to elevate it? Or was it that, the fact that there was like nobody else recognizable kept the focus enough on Jack and the cheetah? Anthony, do you have a perspective on this? Because it's a very unique decision that they made with this sketch.
I think it works better just being Jack Black with the voice of Dismukes. Again, allows Jack Black to carry the entire sketch. Really puts a focus on just like, the absurdity of the content, but also just like, what Jack Black's doing. But also I think to your original point, it throws you right into the point where you don't know exactly what it is that you're watching until you realize that it's part of the show. By adding any additional, I think, actors to the top of it, or like, really like, doing anything else in between, kind of takes away from that. Let Jack drive the ship, add Dismukes in, that way it has the SNL flavor, and then just kind of let this thing go off.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that this was so good because they made that choice to just put the randos or the extras in this instead of just forcing in other cast members. But I just think that it's something that they never do. So I'm like so fascinated with the decision-making process of producing it, because it's exactly the way that like I would have done it. So anyways, it was a really, really interesting commercial that I cannot wait to rewatch. And great stuff by Jack Black. Let's head over to another sketch where we're going to get Chloe, Sarah, Andrew, and Ego all out for dinner at the Burger Tavern. They talk about how they have a couple other friends that are going to join them, but they always try and one-up them. In comes Jack, who's playing a character named Eddie, who hasn't seen them in so long. They talk about how much social media they go on their phones. And then all of a sudden, Jack says, well, I only go on 2 hours a day and I've given up all social media. And as he says that, he like turns to the camera and there's like an eagle cry noise. And He keeps doing that, talking about all I do is reading physical books. Eventually, Bowen's going to come in as Walter, talks about how sorry he's late. He was at a protest and how he's not drinking anymore. And then we get Jack talking about how what he wore, he thrifted it from Goodwill where he volunteers. Bowen made his sweater on his own, looks up, points to the camera. And then we get all of the others trying to one-up each other. Chloe, who saw a foreign film with no subtitles. Eggo's always on call when she's a teacher for special needs kids. There's like a weird moment with Sarah that I'm not sure what went on there, if anybody in the chat knows. But then Heidi comes in and says her shift is ending. She needs to go home for her adopted son from China. And come on, Aurelius. And we realize that the noise is coming from the actual ego. And they're like, oh, that's where that noise is coming from. But the truth of it is that the fun of this sketch is after everyone says something, the crazy looks that they're giving to the camera. So Halle, how did you feel about our Eagle Cry sketch?
This one was a very pleasant surprise for me. I was a little bit skeptical going into it just because I find sometimes with these sketches where like the premise gets really handed to you right at the top of the sketch, it can get repetitive pretty quickly. But I hate to admit how easy it is to get me to laugh with like stupid sound effects and crazy camera angles. It just kept getting funnier, and I was like, man, is my sense of humor might be broken that this eagle screech has me in shambles. But I thought it was so funny watching the cast just like try to find the camera angle at the right time. Was just such a funny moment to me. And I just think this was such we kind of got a lot of funny sound related situations happening in this episode, between the whip sound effects in the game show and now this, and I'm here for it. I think this could have been so simple, and they managed to elevate it to a point where it fit in perfectly with the episode. So I was happy with this sketch.
Yeah, I love this one. I was already really enjoying the episode, and then this came around, and I loved it because it works on two levels for me. One, it's so stupid and silly, the faces that they're making to the camera, and that the whole thing is just like, oh, okay, well, that's where the sound was coming from. It's from an actual eagle. But it's also a really good social commentary. It's the idea that like when friends are sitting around and they're one-upping each other, that they're looking for acknowledgement from the camera or from somebody to say like, oh yeah, like what you're doing is good. And I think that there was like an underlying level of like really interesting psychological analysis between friends as they try and one up each other that is brought through the lens of like a really stupid sketch. So for me, this was as good as it gets. Anthony, what did you think of it?
I really enjoyed this one. One of my all-time favorite SNL sketches will always be, name just forgot that quick. We'll come back to it.
We'll come back to it. Yeah, sure.
I loved the deadpan looking at the camera, and then like the sound effect coming in right underneath of it. Debbie Downer. That's why I couldn't remember the name of it that quick. It was very reminiscent of that, of just like looking dead at the camera, having that moment, everybody laughing. But what I really appreciated was that this one is super digestible. Went really quick. No filler, like really in between everybody kind of giving their one-liners before they then got the sound drop. Love Dismuxe's "We're Polly" and then the fart noise that came right afterwards. This one hits on all cylinders for me. I would be very surprised if this isn't the one sketch of the show that kind of has like a little bit of a half-life, goes viral online after the fact. But yeah, this one super relatable, I think, for anybody that has friends that are always trying to one up each other, trying to be like social justice warriors. This one clicks on all cylinders.
I definitely see that, like the little elements of Debbie Downer to it. I think that the thing was if all the noises like were really different, I think the sketch becomes about the noises. But the fact that they were like mostly the eagle, I think keeps it consistent and keeps the through line there that from what you need. It did remind me as like a weird cousin of those sketches that they would do a few years back that were like careful, like during the Me Too movement. And I think they did one even during COVID where it's just like, okay, watch what you say, careful. And then like one of them would like disappear and like stuff like that. So I feel like that for sure. And then also, how could it not remind you of a very famous Kristen Wiig character, Penelope, who is the one-upper, who then walks around and always finds a way to one-up the people around her and everything that people are saying. But I think, you know, I was sort of wondering when this started if it was just going to be Jack's character. And I think they made a very good decision here to, though Jack kicks things off as being the friend who one-ups everybody, the truth is that like everybody does it. And I just think like the writing on this was really stellar. So great job, Saturday Night Live, for this sketch. Then we're going to go back in time to Athens in all the way back BC, where we're going to have Jane bring Jack over to the first play where Mikey, Chloe, and Andrew are also watching a new form of entertainment. Emil is going to be the first person performing in the play, followed by Bowen and then James and Michael Longfellow. And the whole concept of the first play sketch is that nobody understands what a play is, so that the audience keeps just responding to everything that they're saying, saying, you know, I see no chickens. If you want food, here's some bread. And as they keep saying, the people from the aisles are coming to attack us, the whole crowd turns around. So this is again, a really creative, interesting concept here. Anthony, what did you think of the first play?
This one's interesting. I think I enjoyed it more as a concept overall than I think the execution of it. It definitely did have some moments. I wrote down, I will go when Dismukes just gets up and walks off in the middle to go find the king. And I absolutely love Jack Black's liar. He is no king. He is an olive oil merchant. Yeah, there are a lot of moments in it that I did really enjoy. Not necessarily my favorite sketch of the night, but I did love the concept of just exploring, like, what did the first play feel like, where you have an entire audience that doesn't know what they're dealing with, so they're constantly yelling back at the actors on stage because they don't know that that's not normal.
I have a memory chat of a sketch that was something to do with like a first play where people like, it was an SNL sketch, and I cannot remember what this reminded me of. So if anybody in the chat does have a good comparison for this sketch, I feel like there was once in probably the last like 15 years, a sketch where they did go look at one of the first plays, but it was a different concept. But if you do remember, please let me know. But Halle, how did you feel like they executed with this concept, the first play?
I like this sketch a lot. It definitely wasn't my favorite in the episode, but I feel like if this is one of the lower points, episode overall is on a great note because I still love this one. Like you said, Jon, it had a very like kind of creative and out there aspect to it, but I also found this one to be like at least a little bit grounded in reality, which is why I think I liked it. I've been in audiences at comedy shows, other things, far too many times where the people around me just don't understand what a rhetorical question is. And I felt that in this sketch. I was like, this is how it is now, kind of. People don't know that the actors are not speaking directly to them. But I love this. I actually had the same specific line from Dismukes where he's just like, I will go, and he gets up and walks off, written down as well, which is, I didn't think that was going to be like a standout point to anyone else, but I think that was just a great delivery. And everyone was pretty strong in this sketch, I'd say. So it was definitely like a little bit of an energy drop compared to the rest of the episode, but I don't think that was a bad thing. I think it helped balance out the rest of the episode to me.
Yeah, I thought this was really creative and fun. It does remind me of something that I feel like they did, but regardless, it still felt fresh enough that I felt this concept was really exciting. It's an interesting written sketch in that the emotions of the audience don't really change throughout the sketch. They're always still confused up until the point where the button or the end of the sketch is that we have to explain that this is a play and what a play actually is. And then they're like, well, this is just confusing. And they say, well, next scene, there's nudity. And they're like, okay, well, we'll stick around for that. And I do wonder if maybe that this would have elevated even more if the audience got even more angry and they started to get like riled up to the point where they ended up like attacking the actors or something like that. But I just wonder if it was just like very, very even throughout. And if you're going to do that, then it has to be continuously funny. I do really like what they did here. I feel like this was like 75%, 80% really great stuff. Did we need Jack and Mikey and Chloe and Andrew all as the people who didn't understand? Like, did it have to be the entire crowd? Would it have been better if it was just one person who didn't understand what it was and they were the person that was constantly talking to the actors? These are things that I'm thinking about as I'm watching it. But overall, the creative concept and the fun vibes that Jack brought to it certainly made this a really, really good sketch to watch. So I enjoyed it a lot. Then we get to a music video for the second week in a row. We get sort of like a music video where we're gonna have Keenan and Ego singing about Jamaica, and it sort of looks like an ad for Jamaica, that they're singing about what they enjoy there, the things that they see, the things that they look at. Except the thing that they laugh at the most is a goth kid on vacation, and we get Michael Longfellow playing Dexter, who is brought there by his parents, played by Heidi and James, and he just wants to go home. He doesn't want to be there. In comes Jack Black, who starts singing Welcome to the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. Definitely one of my all-time favorite songs. And it was so fun as we get the fun vacation vibes opposite the feelings that Michael Longfellow talking about how happiness is a disease. Halle, was this exciting for you to get this big role for Michael Longfellow, and how did you feel about Goth Kid on vacation?
This was exciting for me. I love almost nothing more than a well-executed Michael Longfellow role. I think he is so awesome, and like, especially when the role just clicks and it's perfect for him, it's always an episode highlight for me. And this was one of those moments for Michael Longfellow. Really just an awesome role for him to be playing in this sketch. I, from the beginning, was like, all right, how is Jack Black going to play into this? I'm intrigued. We went a decent chunk before he came into the sketch, and I couldn't have been more pleased. I also love My Chemical Romance and Welcome to the Black Parade, so I was like, this is awesome all around. But it was just really fun to have a like strong Longfellow role in this episode, and I feel like it's kind of been coming for a while. I've been missing those like super big Longfellow sketches. So this was an episode highlight for me, partially just because I love Michael Longfellow and his kind of like spotlight sketches always hit for me, but I loved this.
I thought it was so great. And, there's always the danger of like overusing Jack with singing if he's going to be doing it in every sketch. And he definitely does it a lot. But here I feel like it worked on all levels and it was so great. Just the twists and turns and tone changes in this sketch, I feel like were really, really well done. Anthony, what were your thoughts on the Goth Kid on vacation?
I really enjoyed this one. Song A is super, super catchy. Longfellow I thought was amazing. Really wouldn't mind if this character came back and we got to see him doing other things with his family or just in other scenarios and pre-tapes, because I think that it is like, a character that can be a plug and play. So that could be a lot of fun. But no, this one, it just works on so many different levels. And then again, the whole episode, you're just kind of clamoring to see Jack Black just sing and like, play around with the other actors, and to get that other opportunity in this one was just great. Also, just another, I think, through line too, where you see Keenan just being the straw that stirs the drink. Just really great as a supporter, being a part of the Jamaican band in this one. But yeah, this one works for me on all levels.
Yeah, it really felt like for the first time, Michael Longfellow could have like a recurring character. We've sort of been waiting for him to have that thing. And I do feel like there's definitely other uses for the Goth Kid. Obviously, Chris Kattan and Molly Shannon had the very famous Goth Talk sketch back in the 90s. But I do think incorporating, that sort of, that vibe to a guy who is obviously like a really good looking, like what's seemingly normal from the outside guy, who in some of his sketches and in some of his characters has this like dark sinisterness to them that I think really, really works well in sketch form. And we saw it with him as a game show host. But I do think him just being like a kid who's angry at the world is a great path. So if I was like coaching Michael Longfellow right now, I would say just take this character and run with it. It doesn't always have to be in the music video. Like, it's okay. Like the fact that it is somewhat opposite of what people believe your personality to be is great for you in SNL world. So I think that this was really, really fun. And it looked beautiful and so well done. That, like, again, another thing from tonight that I just can't wait to rewatch for the second time. So this was awesome. All right, let's head over to our musical guests. Who we get double musical guests tonight. Elton John, former SNL host, who did double duty Once Upon a Time, and Brandi Carlile, some people's favorite musical guest from the last few years, who are going to sing 2 songs from the new album. They're going to sing Little Richard's Bible and Who Believes in Angels. We also get Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers playing drums on these songs. So it's a little bit of like a super group that was formed here for SNL. And Halle, I mean, this really felt like a big party at SNL tonight, just having all of these stars in the building. How did you feel about Elton and Brandi?
I loved it so much. I thought it complemented Jack as host perfectly. This duo I just love. Like you said, Brandy's one of my favorite musical guests from recent seasons. And I love Elton John so hard. My cat's named after an Elton John song. I'm surprised she's not being evil in here again. But I'll enjoy it while it lasts. But I was so excited coming into this. It exceeded all of my expectations. I thought their set was so fun. And I just thought it was very complimentary to the like overall high energy, good vibes of the episode, and just like a very star-studded episode. I loved it. It kept the energy up. I feel like musical guests, it's easy for the energy to kind of dip a little bit. I didn't feel that this week, and I loved this musical guest choice and their performances.
Yes, it was a big improvement over what we saw last week. Anthony, what did you feel about Elton and Brandy's performances?
Amazing energy. The whole thought that I kept having throughout the entire episode, especially once they hit the stage, anybody that was lucky enough to be in the studio this night, they really got a dope show. They sound absolutely amazing. It's great seeing Elton John, after having this huge, world tour that's gone on for the past like 2 or some odd years, like, his farewell tour, still have the same energy and still have, the same love for performing, and, having a collaborator to do it with that's like, matching his level of charisma and all of that has been great. No, they were absolutely fantastic performers to be a part of the show tonight.
Yeah, just came in and just crushed it. So happy to get to see them together, and it's just really cool whenever you get like a legend in the building like this. Like, you think about all the legends that have been there this season, between Stevie Nicks, this Gaga, obviously a lot of like pop divas that are out right now, and then all the people who performed at SNL 50, the homecoming concert, and again at the anniversary special. It has been a huge year for music at SNL, and it'll be really fun next week too, with Lizzo coming back to the show. So really excited about this one. Before we head to Weekend Update, Halle, let me ask you, are you a big snow globe person?
A big snow globe person?
Yes. Are you a big snow globe person? Do you enjoy snow globes?
Sure. I feel like I'm missing something right now.
Well, you are, because we have a snow globe from the NBC store that they're still selling for a few more days. Only 1,000 SNL snow globes have been made for SNL 50 that show off the SNL home base. They have the snow globe and the SNL 50 ornaments that go up on your tree. And exclusively for listeners of the Saturday Night Network, we have a deal just for you. So they're offering 25% off just for the next few days for anybody who listens to the SNN who wants to purchase one of these items. You can call the NBC store at 212-664-5967 or go online and enter the promo code SNL Network to get one of these items. Like I said, just a few more days to order these. I know it's not the holidays, but that doesn't mean that you can't get these for next year to either hang up on your tree or put as incredible memorabilia from the 50th season. So really touched that NBC sent this over to us, and just want to make sure that all of our friends who are interested in getting the snow globe or the SNL 50 ornament can. So remember, promo code SNL Network, or call the NBC store and mention us. And then, of course, you will get that 25% discount code. So, Halle, now that I asked you once, I'll ask you again. Are you a fan of snow globes?
I sure am. I might have to get that, actually. I've seen the snow globe and the ornament in person, and I can attest they are awesome and they look super cool. So knowing about that discount, I might have to hop on that.
All right, awesome. All right, let's head over to a Weekend Update, where we get what I would say is a wild edition of Weekend Update. The energy of the night certainly felt throughout the segment. We start off with talking about the stock market and how money is leaving the stock market faster than Morgan Wallen left Goodnights last week. So great joke there. We also get to see two different sets of correspondents. First, let's talk about Grant and Alyssa. So for the second time, we get to see them on screen. I was back in the John Mulaney episode that Marcelo Hernandez and Jane Wickline played the couple that you can't believe are together. They also tried to bring it back for the Marty Short and the Dave Chappelle episodes. They were cut from those episodes, but we do have it back here, Anthony. So were you excited to get the return of Grant and Alyssa?
Very, very excited. I think the line that I wrote down, don't my baby look like she would go stupid on a woodwind? Absolutely hilarious. In general, I would say that the Weekend Update this week was probably my favorite part of the entire episode. We'll get to the second and the last part of Weekend Update this week. But them coming back as the couple that your surprises together was absolutely fantastic. But thought that the writing for this week's Weekend Update was just spectacular.
Yeah, it was really fun. Halle, how did you feel about the return of Grant and Alyssa?
I have been dying to see this return. I loved the first installment of this. And then knowing that it had been addressed a couple times and not made it to the live show was torturous for me a little bit. This is one of my favorite Weekend Update guests we've had in a while, mainly because I feel like I relate. Generally, you can find me, I think, as they said, sipping tea like the bear on the box. That spoke to my soul. I love everything about that. I just think that they're a duo. I just like their characters. Marcelo and Jane are a duo I don't think my brain could have ever paired together. But it works so well. And I think it was just like perfect to fit into the puzzle of this episode and lived up to the hype of the first installment of this. So I loved this. It was an episode highlight for me for sure. Maybe like top 3 parts of the episode.
I agree. I mean, it's definitely my favorite thing that Jane Wickline has done this season. She's been on Update a lot, obviously twice as this and 3 times as her TikTok stuff. But I just think it's really fun. Like when you're a rookie and you're trying to still figure out your place on the show, to play like into what people perceive you as. And then to have Marcelo like really push her to the point where she starts saying those like raunchy lines back to him, like don't share those little shorts unless you're trying to drop them. And then talking about like boundaries and all that stuff. I think it really, really works. I think these characters are fantastic. And I would be excited to see them again. Like I think they work every time. So for me, this was really fun and a good use of Marcelo's like high energy to just contrast Jane's just extremely timid demeanor. So this was very exciting to have them back on the show. After that, we're going to get a really interesting joke where we're going to joke about Chris Brown and the episode that aired back in, I guess it was it 2012 when this episode aired, but or 2011, February 12, 2011, where Russell Brand hosted with musical guest Chris Brown, and we get the introduction, and then Colin's gonna say, wow, we really know how to pair them up. And it's just so funny to me that like so many years later, they're willing to go back to that. But for many years, they just would like not touch the subject. But that to me was a great joke in between these two correspondents. And then we're going to get our second correspondent, which is Nwodim, who talks about how there's no comedian at the White House Correspondents' Dinner coming up and what her speech would look like if they let her host, as she transforms into Miss Eggy and goes in front of the desk and does an entire riff, including to the point where she does some like basically back and forth with the audience. And the audience says, as she goes, these men ain't, and they yell shit. And she's like, oh, we're going to get fined for that. And there's a complete ad-libbing there. So that part definitely was not addressed. That was completely authentic for the live show. And it's moments like that that make me love Saturday Night Live. So much fun. And you're going to see those things on Reels for many years to come. Anthony, your thoughts on Ego's performance here on Weekend Update?
This was my favorite part of the entire episode. Absolutely unhinged. So funny. Love that she has like Miss Eggy, and like you hear the correspondent's like, wait, who, Miss Eggy? And she's like, that's my new stage name, and like just keeps going on with it. No, she was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I just didn't expect that. Didn't know where it was coming from. Like I said at the top, Weekend Update this week felt like it was just completely unhinged. But loved her doing her crowd work. It just felt like such a breath of fresh air that I was not anticipating coming in at the end of this. But absolutely fantastic. Like I said, my favorite part of the entire episode.
Yeah, I think Ego never misses on Update. She has to have one of the highest hit rates in the history of the show. I think she is one of the best Update feature performers in the history of the show. And because she doesn't repeat characters on Updates, she'll never get the credit that she deserves in context to the people who have been on Weekend Update for many years and come back and repeat these great characters like Bill Hader as Stefan, or, Taron Killam, or, so many people from over the decades that would come back and just do these characters that people would just be so excited to see. But because she doesn't do that, I don't think she gets the respect that she deserves for being so fantastic at the Update desk. And this was so great, Halle, because it wasn't at the desk. It was in front of the desk. It was very like Chris Kattan-esque, where something just like goes in front of the anchors, and then you have the whole back and forth where they're like, what are you doing right now? How did you feel about Ego's Update performance tonight?
I loved it, and part of it is for that reason. Like I said earlier when we were talking about the monologue, one of my favorite things is just like a unique use of space, or just like some sort of deviation from the norm in terms of like using the space in the studio. So like someone getting up from the desk, like walking away from the desk, walking in front of it, always just like engages me more. So that had me. I love cast members on Update as themselves. It's continuously like one of my favorite things, one of my favorite Update appearances that we ever see. And I think just like seeing the audience involvement in this one was so unique, because that doesn't really happen all that often. There's not really much of a chance for the audience to like participate a little bit. And seeing how thrown off they all were by it, it just was like such a great culmination of those factors. And I loved this. I was like, no way, we're going to have two phenomenal Update guests. I guess three, because the first one was a duo. But no way these are both going to be as awesome as each other. And they were. We cruised through Update with that high energy all the way through. And I loved this for Ego. Like you said, I don't think she ever misses on Update for me, but this was like exceptional for her.
It was so good. And it was one of those things where, a less seasoned performer probably gets thrown off by the audience actually saying shit on live television. But she plays it so well and says, like, so it talks about Lorne, talks about gonna get fined. I believe she was say, yeah, we gonna get fined for that. And I just think for me, it only added to what she was doing, because she was playing herself. She had the opportunity to have this like meta moment in front of the camera where something goes wrong and she's able to react to it. And I talk on the show all the time of the benefits of playing yourself on SNL and how much that connects the audience with you so that they can then buy into everything else you do on the show. And I think for Ego, who is already become like a great SNL cast member, I feel like this is one of those moments on her resume whenever her time is done here that you're going to look back on and be like, that was unbelievable. So I think she did an amazing job here on Weekend Update tonight. I thought overall this was a fantastic Weekend Update. Cut from the desk here tonight was Sarah Sherman, who was going to play Colin Jost's financial agent. So I assume one of those like Jost roasts in the form of something else that we have seen in the past. So we get Sarah cut and instead get the Ego and then Grant and Alyssa Marcelo Jane pair on a Weekend Update. Okay, let's head to the second half of the show, where we're going to get a sketch where we'll open up on just one cast member and the host, Sarah Sherman, who is playing Francesca, opposite of Jack, who's playing Greg, this couple who's really likes each other and they want to take it to the next level. And they go up on the wires wearing their silk pajamas and they start singing about doing things to each other and the positions and dirty talk and all of that. Eventually, they'll bring in Bowen as a third and a musical guest, Brandi Carlile, as a fourth. But this was, a song that they're all singing together and they're having some fun and they're playing with the SNL space, like we talked about. Anthony, how do you feel like this lovemaking song sketch went for you?
This one was solid. Again, I feel like overall theme, right? How many times can we get Jack Black to sing and perform during an episode? Very, very solid. Love that we got Brandi Carlile live and not during a pre-tape. Like actually like on the flight system as well. Yeah, overall, this one, not my favorite sketch of the night, but hits a lot of the points. I love Bowen, so I loved his addition becoming the third as a part of their couple. Yeah, this one I thought was solid, but not necessarily like the most spectacular moment of the episode.
Yeah, Halle, it reminded me a little bit of what I really liked from the Gaga episode, where I keep going back on my own time and watching Bowen's performance in the Wonderful Tonight sketch that he did with Gaga. And I was like, I do think that if you get the right host with the right amount of singing ability, you can produce these moments that are a little bit like more serious than the average sketch, and then incorporate the funny into it. And I think that obviously the topic of lovemaking is like not the most serious topic, but it's still something that I feel like you get this like couple, you get this like sort of like romantic moment that you're wondering, is this sketch gonna border on being like very sweet instead of being just very funny. And I think they play with your emotions throughout that until they end up bringing in Bowen, Jack's like coworker, and then eventually Brandi Carlile into the sketch. So I think that this one for me was really, really fun and worked off of some of the things that I liked a couple weeks ago. How did you feel about it?
I agree with you, John. I enjoyed it. I think at the beginning, I was like, okay, it's going to be Jack Black singing again. It's going to be cute. Someone will probably come in as some crazy side character. It'll probably be Bowen. And even though like those predictions did come true, which sometimes to me is me being like, it was an easy sketch. I predicted what was going to happen. It was still like a pleasant surprise. I thought Brandi was like a highlight of this sketch to me, which I didn't expect. Her coming in was like a total surprise to me, and I loved it. I was like, Brandi, get an episode. That was awesome. I loved it. And I thought that like if you're gonna do something physical like that up on the wires, Jack Black is the person to do it with. Like his ability to commit to everything. And he looks so like he's able to do it in such a funny way while also being so comfortable with the space that's being used and like the physicality of it. I I agree that with like some of the comments that wasn't my favorite part of the episode. I think at this point I had a little bit of like song fatigue, but I still thought it was a strong sketch overall, and Brandi really elevated it for me.
What's interesting about this sketch is that I think I would have felt the exact same way about it if they weren't elevated on the wires. Like, I don't know that the wires did anything to make this sketch better. There wasn't like this thing where they're being like moved around the entire set, or they're hitting things by accident, or the fact that they're up in the air flying like affects the dialogue in a specific way. So it sort of felt like a little gratuitous. And I think I enjoyed the idea of the wires more when it was just the couple going up in the wires, because it almost felt like these two people who are in a couple can have a conversation about lovemaking only when they're up on the wires, like they're separate from their actual lives. So now that they can actually have this conversation, but the facade of that sort of goes away when you bring in Bowen and Brandi. So what I would say is that like, I do really like, I like a lot of the things that they were going for here, but I do wonder how the sketch would have looked completely on the ground if they weren't trying to force the wire situation into here, because it's not like it changed anything for the sketch for me.
You know, John, there's a sketch. I'm trying to remember the year. It's Chance the Rapper when he hosted. And he has a similar moment where it's like he's like they're flying and it's like they're talking about being in love. But the wires almost become the third character, where it's like they're bumping into each other. It's super clunky. They're breaking because like it's so ridiculous as it's happening. And I agree with you there, where it's like, if that had kind of been almost the premise of it, of like, you know, showing how clunky this is going to be and how this system is almost like taking away from like, you know, this really nice heartfelt moment, then I think it would have added. But in this case, it almost just felt like, you know, here's a really nice fun effect that we have the capability of doing that doesn't necessarily add anything to the episode except that we can do this.
Agreed. Yeah, this was the sketch that we're referring to is a season 45 sketch with Chance the Rapper and Cecily Strong, Love at First Sight. And it is a really, really fun sketch to go back and check out and compare. It's just interesting to think about, like you said, the Wires being an additional character in the sketch and if this would work in this version. Because to me, like when you have Wires in a monologue, like a host going up on Wires, or you have Wires in a sketch, it typically insinuates something momentous is happening. Like something is just like is something so incredible that forces them to get off the ground. I think of Molly Carney at the end of season 48 on Weekend Update going up in the Wires, or Chris Farley as Bennett Brower. Like I think of these moments of like, okay, there's this big thing. And I felt like the Wires at the start of the sketch represent like a big thing in their relationship. But I don't know if when you start talking about 3 ways and then 4 ways or orgies, if that is, you know, enough for the Wires for me. So anyways, interesting discussion that we'll continue to have about this sketch. Speaking of Brandi Carlile, Brandi in dress rehearsal was in the next sketch that we see, Potluck Jam. Her role is cut from the live version of this, but we see Jack, who's a part of Big Ricky and the Minnows, this band who's having a potluck jam, and they're going to sing Free Fallin', and they're going to invite other people to join him and Keenan and Andrew on stage, except everyone continues to bring up a bass. So we get James, who's playing Trish, brings up a bass. Then we get Mikey with the McDonald's #2 on his chest, brings up a bass. Heidi is Wet Out of the Lake, who comes up with a bass. Marcelo comes up with some spoons, but they're really just for crack, because he's going to bring up a bass. Bowen brings up a keyboard carrying case for a bass. Ego has a hound. And then we get Emil, Chloe, Ashley, Jane, and Devin, who eventually come in with bass. So I think only Sarah and Longfellow missing from the sketch. Otherwise, we get the rest of the cast who are just bass after bass in this one. Halle, what did you think of the potluck jam?
This one was all right for me. I liked it. This was kind of the point in the episode where I was like, we've been singing this whole time, you guys. When will we stop singing? But I always really like and appreciate like a big ensemble sketch, which I think might be a little bit of a hot take. I know some people are like, we don't need a billion people just to hit the same point. But I always like it. And I really liked like Bowen having it in the piano case, and the dog. Like once it started getting creative with the bass, I liked it. I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of the like sound aspect of it, like a little bit more ridiculous amounts of bass or just like crazy going with that. Although what was it? Was it the Simpsons theme song that they were playing? That kind of took me out. That was really funny. But like a little bit more playing around with the bass itself, I think would have driven the sketch home a little bit more for me. But overall, I think it was a good sketch for towards the end of the episode.
Yeah, you know what was interesting when I was watching this, like, I think back to when Jimmy Fallon hosted for the first time. He did the like Beethoven sketch where he's like introducing all the musicians in the band and then they're all playing something. So I'm like watching the sketch, and as the bass is coming, like people are bringing up more bass, I expected the sound of the song to like drastically alter. And I know that that's what they're going for eventually when they do play the Simpsons theme and it sort of sounds different. And eventually like they're going to cause an earthquake with all of the bass. But I didn't feel like when James comes up for the first time that I'm hearing the additional bass in the song that James is doing. And then Mikey comes up and I'm hearing some more bass. And I think from like an audio perspective, my first note was just like, I can't hear the instruments. And I'm wondering if that was like supposed to be what happens in this sketch. Anthony, how did it play for you, the potluck jam?
This one's interesting because it's like, I appreciate the commitment, right? From Heidi really, really enjoying her wardrobe to Jack Black just having to be like, you know, the kind of like, I guess, ringleader for all of this. I respect the commitment a lot because everybody's like, you know, 1,000% in. As far as the game that's being played of just like, you know, constantly stacking, it just I didn't know where it was going. At the top of the sketch, you think, oh, another opportunity for Jack Black to sing. And then it slowly like, you know, devolves into, we're just going to keep stacking this with like, you know, additional players, additional instruments, and everybody kind of having like, you know, their quick moment. Didn't land the way that I thought that it would. And then the ending of it really just kind of had me like, okay, that's not at all where I thought that was going either. So yeah, appreciate the commitment of everybody to make the sketch happen and to make all of their, independent pieces work. But as a whole, not necessarily my favorite sketch.
Yeah, I would probably say this is my least favorite sketch of the night, and it's significantly boosted by the vibes that Jack brings to the sketch. Like, you put a worse host in the sketch, it is like dreadful to me. But this one is just like he's creating this like fun environment where the whole cast is jamming out and being silly. And like Heidi, who I know was just like over the moon excited about Jack Black being there, obviously is going to like go all out in this sketch with Jack. And like that was really fun for me to see. So this went from being like a kind of a meh sketch or a mid sketch to like, okay, I could dig it just because they were all having really fun. And I felt that energy through the screen. We are going to get one more sketch. They fit in one more for the end of the night, and it is the day in Times Square, the VJ day in Times Square, as we get the World War II kiss, as we get to see Michael Longfellow and Heidi kissing. But of course, Jack is upset by this because Heidi is his wife, and he just went over to go get some hot dogs, only to find that his wife is kissing Michael Longfellow. We get Andrew, who comes to kiss her on the mouth, and people start lining up. Keenan brings over the fifth dog, also lines up to kiss the nurse. And then we get this thing where, Heidi's going to kiss Mikey. Jack's going to try and kiss Sarah. Turns out he's a racist cartoonist, and James comes over to take the photo. This is probably the most 10-to-1, 5-to-1 sketch I've seen the entire season, where you get something at the end of the night that is like so silly in nature and so stupid that even describing it on the podcast, I can't help but laugh just how stupid it is. So Anthony, your thoughts on the World War II kiss at the end of the night?
I enjoyed this one. Seeing Jack Black play the role of the cuck in this actually works really, really well. But I think, again, to your point, right? It's so silly. It's so ridiculous. And again, if we're looking at the previous sketch and then we're looking at this one, you see the game. You can see, like, as things are constantly being stacked, you see where, like, Jack tries to make his move and, like, it gets immediately, like, slapped in the face. Not going to happen. This one was fun. I actually really enjoyed this one and felt like it was a nice way to kind of land the plane. And was happy that the sketch before this wasn't, the final sketch of the night. Felt like a nice way of saying, like, here's how crazy this entire, show and this entire episode has been. We're going to land it on something that, like, again, Jack Black is the kind of core and, like, the nucleus of all of it. But, super silly, super fun. Yeah, this one lands for me.
Halle, what do you think of this one?
Like you said, I feel like it's the most like 10-to-1, 5-to-1-ish sketch we've had in a long time. And I love sketches like that are just so goofy and so silly and, for lack of a better word, so dumb. I thought all of the layers in this really did work. I was like, I can't believe I'm laughing at this. This is such a goofy concept. I think Jack Black was perfect in this role. And even just like watching, you could tell the cast was having fun with it. Heidi was giggling the whole time. And this was just like a really fun end to the episode. We finally were done singing. I love that they had Jack Black sing so much. I can only do so many singing sketches in a row. So this was like a great palate cleanser for the end of the episode to me. And also really just like kind of wrapped up a great streak in this episode for Heidi, I feel like. It was a strong episode for her, and this really kind of like tied that in a bow. So I liked this, and I think this was a great note to end the episode on, and made me happy as someone who loves just like really goofy, silly last sketches of the night.
One of my least favorite tropes in SNL sketches, and if we were doing the Hot Take show back in 1995, I would have been saying this a lot, but I hate when newspapers end sketches as like the headline to read from a sketch. But Glutton drops nurse as he goes to be upset about his hot dogs being dropped gave me such a great laugh at the end of the night. This was so good. I really feel like this is one of the best last sketches of the night that we've gotten this season. So for me, just very, very fun stuff overall from Jack. So that does it for the sketches for the night. We do get a tribute bumper at the end of the show to Val Kilmer, who passed away this week. And I just want to shout out Val Kilmer's episode of Saturday Night Live from December 9th, 2000, back in season 26. It is an all-time underrated, great episode of Saturday Night Live. Definitely go back and check that one out if you haven't watched that one in a while. It's a great episode to go and see from a really fun season of the show. I will tell you what was cut from the episode while Halle and Anthony think about how they want to rate this show out of 10. Chat will also ask for you to put your ratings in there, and we'll put them up on screen. So as mentioned, Sarah Sherman was cut on Weekend Update as Colin Jost's financial agent. So maybe we'll see this next week at some point. Then we also have a few other cut sketches. One was a nanny sketch where Jack Black reveals to his family that he has been in a Mrs. Doubtfire situation. We get the kids played by Ashley and Andrew. A light night for Ashley, interesting enough. So hopefully we'll get more from her next week. Ashley and Andrew, and the wife played by Heidi. We also get Keenan in this sketch. Then we get a sketch called 24-Year-Old, where Jack Black is a teacher reuniting with his old students, Emil, James, Andrew, and Bowen, and spends the entire time talking about how he's dating a 24-year-old girl played by Chloe Feynman. And then, believe it or not, there was another SNL cartoon, an animated short cut from this episode called Medieval Battle that maybe that will pop up at some point in the season with voices from Jack, Keenan, James, and Devin. Now, what is interesting about this one versus the one that we saw last week is this one does feature the host as a voice. So you would think that they probably wouldn't fit it into a new episode. And if anything, this may pop up online. So if that is the case, that should, oh, there you go. Actually, as I was describing this, it seems like the cartoon just got posted on SNL's Instagram page. So The Great Battle is out now if you want to go and watch that one. So there you go. Exciting to have something else come up from the show. All right, Halle, how are you going to rate this one out of 10?
I think I'm going to go pretty big here. I think I'm going to give it like a 9, almost, maybe a 9. I'll say it. I'll give it a 9. I love Jack Black forever and always. And it was a really strong night for Andrew Dismukes, who I feel like any episode that's like a strong night for Andrew Dismukes is always up there in my rating. So I'm gonna go bold. I'm gonna give this one a 9. Maybe like my second or third favorite of the season.
All right, Anthony, how are you gonna rate this one?
I'm going to go 7.5. It might have been an 8 if Duke had won prior, and I'd be $200 richer.
Are you a Duke
right
guy?
now. I'm not, but I had money on the game, John, and I really wanted that cash. But I think the top half of the show was stronger than the latter half. But with Jack Black hosting it, there's a quote from Bryan Cranston where he talks about scripts, and he's like, a C script can be taken to a B if you have good enough actors. And I think similarly here, when you have Jack Black, it's automatically going to pump everything up a little bit higher. So yeah, first half of the show clicks on a lot of cylinders. Last 3 sketches didn't quite land for me, but because it's Jack Black, it goes a little bit higher. 7.5, almost an 8.
Okay, I think I'm going to go 8.5 on this one. I really feel like Jack just brought it. I was so excited to have him back at the show, and his energy was infectious tonight. I feel like he elevated a ton of sketches. I was pretty happy with the cold open, and Weekend Update absolutely crushed. I would say the only thing that didn't fully work for me was the potluck jam. Obviously, I could nitpick about some other sketches. It wasn't like, I don't think this episode was maybe the all-time classic that the 2005 one was, but this was like another really solid episode for Jack Black to add to his hosting resume. I would say definitely top 3 episode of the season for me. So I'm feeling really good about what we saw here, and I can't wait to keep talking about this all week long. So of course, we'll be back here on Monday night for our roundtable at 8 p.m. Eastern. Got a great crew assembled to talk about the history of Jack Black on Saturday Night Live, of course, Elton John and Brandi Carlile as well. We'll talk through why did he come back to host now and everything that went into this episode, all the best moments and best sketches. So you got to join us Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Mike is ready to go with the stats next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for By the Numbers to talk about the power rankings. A lot of movement in the power rankings last week. Cannot wait to see who ends up near the top of the rankings after this week with all of the new data coming in. So that's Wednesday night. And then next Thursday night, we are very excited to premiere our conversation, our SNL Stories interview with the great Joe Piscopo that we just recorded a couple days ago. Really excited to present that one to you. I felt like Joe just was like story after story talking about his time at Saturday Night Live, things that have happened since Saturday Night Live, and just really some great background. He has a new book that's out, and he told us stories that he didn't even remember to put in the book. So this, for me, was one of my favorite interviews I've done in a while. I'm very excited to present that to you next Thursday night. So SNL Stories with Joe Piscopo, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on the SNN. To never miss any of the shows we have going on here, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. Feel free to leave a thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed what you saw here tonight, and you can follow us on social platforms at the SNL Network to see all of our coverage of Jack Black's episode and then Jon Hamm's episode, which I am so excited about, coming up next week, which we will of course be back here for the Hot Take Show to talk about Jon Hamm and Lizzo. Halle, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Anything you would like to say to the listeners?
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun Hot Take Show to be on. I'm very honored that I got to talk about Jack Black. I love him so much. But I don't really have any socials to say to follow me on or anything, but doubling down on, that's not where Jon is on my screen, doubling down on where Jon is, or what Jon said. It's late, you guys. If you don't already, follow, subscribe to the podcast on everything. I love the podcast. It's my favorite podcast in the world. So do that. And buy snow globes. Yes. They're awesome in person.
Yes. High praise. I appreciate that. Anthony, thanks so much for joining us. Always great to catch up with you. Anything you would like to say to the listeners?
Nothing really to promote, man. Happy that I was able to make it in before the end of the season. So, always good catching up with y'all. Eric Conway on Instagram if you want to follow me, but overall, nothing to really promote. Buy the snow globes, please. Jon did such a great job sliding that in and pushing that promo code. I didn't even see that coming and had no idea. Do us a favor, get the snow globe. And then, subscribe to us on every single place you listen to podcasts. Follow us on all of our social media pages as well.
Yeah, I mean, just like the sketch that we got here with Sarah Sherman and with Jack Black, you can promote baby making because Anthony has a new baby, so that's why we haven't get to see him on the pod lately. But we're all really happy for you, Anthony, that you got something new to love in your life, and hopefully we'll get to hear from you again soon on the podcast. So I really appreciate everybody staying up late with us here to talk through this momentous episode of Saturday Night Live with Jack Black finally returning after almost 20 years. Of course, want to thank LateNighter.com for being our presenting partner for the show here tonight, Halle and Anthony for being amazing panelists, and everyone for their commentary all night long, everyone behind the scenes too as well. Just appreciate all of you. So on behalf of everyone here at the SNN, my name is Jon Schneider, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.